Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, and I'm so excited to bring this show to you. Show Me the Way is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. This week on Show Me the Way, I'm joined by a beautiful friend who has inspired me for years, Kristen Ulin. Kristen is a faith-filled wife, mom, business owner, and positive light in our community. We first met when her daughter and my younger son, Nathan, the inspiration behind this podcast, were in elementary school, and it was so fun reminiscing about those early days together. Kristen brings so much joy and encouragement to this conversation. While she has had many life experiences she could have shared, she chose to talk about one of her biggest recent leaps of faith, becoming the owner of Thrive Pilates and Fitness Studio on January 1st. After years in the corporate world, Kristen followed God's calling and became certified through Revelation Wellness, combining faith and fitness in her work. She eventually joined their staff, where she has now served for over 10 years. When the opportunity to purchase Thrive came along, she faced a huge decision. Through prayer, fasting, and countless conversations with her family, she found peace that this was exactly where God was leading her. 7 months into business ownership, Thrive is truly living up to its name. Kristen shares what it's been like balancing entrepreneurship with family life, trusting God's plan through uncertainty, and leaning on the incredible support of her family, friends, neighbors, and the amazing Thrive community. I loved hearing how she faithfully walked through each step of this journey, and I know you'll be encouraged by her perspective, whether you're facing a big decision of your own or simply looking for a reminder to trust the path that's been placed before you. Welcome back to the Show Me the Way podcast. My guest today is Kristen Ulin. There are so many connections with Kristen and me, and I'm so excited that I'm able to speak with her today. I've known Kristen for quite some time and have mainly followed her through social media, so this will be the first time we've really had a long conversation outside of like school and stuff with our kids, and I'm really looking forward to it. And as the case with a couple other guests, I put the idea out on Facebook recently to remind people everyone has a story to share. A mutual friend suggested Kristen, and that's why we're here today. Kristen lives in my community and not too far from me, and we have many connections in common. She's also very connected to the church I attend and has made an impact on many individuals there as well, including someone I'm close to from my Bible study. Kristen has an extensive faith-filled background and has been a mentor to others, as well as a true inspiration from her faith perspective, but also in business and parenthood. Kristen had many different directions she could go in, but I know she's going to talk to us a lot about buying a business and getting it started and how her faith has helped her through each step. I can't wait to learn from her and continue to be inspired. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show, Kristen.
Well, what an introduction. Thank you, Andrea. It's so good to be here, and it's humbling because you have had an extensive list of guests that are truly remarkable. And so when we started having the conversation about me coming on, I thought, geez, what do I have to share with your audience? But we're just going to see how it goes and take it one step at a time.
Yes, exactly. I love that. And like I keep saying, everybody has a story to share. So I know we're going to learn from you. There's different perspectives and different things that people have learned along their paths that we can all learn from as well. So I shared a little bit about what I know of Kristen and how we know one another, but I'm going to give her a couple minutes to share a little bit more with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's always one of those questions where it's like, geez, how far back do we go? Right.
Right.
But for the sake of this conversation today and talking about how, as of January 1st, I purchased a Pilates studio here in our hometown, Pilates and Fitness. I figured I'll rewind the tape a little bit to just talk about how I'm wired and how we got here. Because if you would have told me 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago that I would be in this seat today, I probably would have laughed, but never put it too far out of the question. So, fitness has always just been a part of my life. I certainly was not like a collegiate level athlete or anything like that, like your son, but I've just always loved sports. I've always loved fitness. And so, um, it's just been like for me as a student. But 10 years ago, the switch flipped when I went through instructor training with Revelation Wellness and became certified to teach fitness. But true story, I went through the training for personal development. I really didn't see myself teaching classes after the training. I just saw, this is interesting. Two of my favorite things getting put together, faith and fitness. Let's go through this and see what it's all about. And going through this training, you also got certified to teach a Bible study. And I thought, well, I could do that. I'll invite some of my friends over and I'll take them through this Bible study about learning how to care for your body and what does the scripture say about that. And while they're here, maybe we'll just do like a backyard boot camp. So my kids had a trampoline, and literally that would be one of the stations. Like, go jump on the trampoline. Now come over here and we'll run some sprints. And it was thriving, pun intended, because that's the name of my now studio. And so it just kept growing and evolving. And I thought, you know what? I can do this. I can do this. I can lead people through some fitness classes, but maybe a little bit differently than the way of the world, because the way of the world is often competitive. Like, outdo the person next to you, or maybe it's just a little bit not how I wanted to from a vain perspective. And to each their own, no judgment. I'm just saying I wanted to do it a little bit differently. So, just started teaching. I've been teaching classes for 10 years. And it just so happened that the studio that I was working for and teaching the strength classes, our previous owner retired and moved to South Carolina. And almost 1 year ago, it was actually last year on my birthday, which is August 12th, her and I met for coffee. And she posed the question that I did not see coming, which was, would you be interested in purchasing the studio? And so, through much prayer, fasting, talking with my Lord, talking with that's funny. I actually meant to say talking with my husband, and I said talking with my Lord, but that's a true statement too.
Yes.
Talking with the Lord and my husband, and just some trusted friends, and doing a lot of chat GPT because I've never done this before and didn't know where to even begin. The conversation just continued, and here we are. As of January 1st, I am the proud new owner of Thrive Pilates and Fitness. And today, what I would love to talk about is what it looks like when you feel called to take a step of obedience, but you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what the road ahead looks like. You don't know if it's going to be successful. And quite frankly, a lot of times you may feel like you've bit off more than you can chew. There's a difference between courage and how do I want to say this? There's a quote. I should have wrote it down ahead of time, but courage is having fear but doing it anyways. That's like a short summary of the quote that I just kind of live by because I was never necessarily ready to do this. And I don't think anybody who tackles big decisions is ever really fully ready, like especially parenting, right? Like all of a sudden you may have 40 weeks to prepare and then you have this baby and you're like, okay, now what? And then all of these seasons that come with parenting, we don't know what we're doing half the time, right? By the way, can we just pause for a second and acknowledge that Nathan and Kaylee are going to be seniors? Like,
I know, that is so funny. I was just asking him, I'm like, "Remind me when you guys were in school." It was elementary for sure, and then it
yeah,
was middle school, but then your daughter went to another school for
yeah,
high school. Yes.
yes. It
But
was
it's insane.
1 year middle school. She ended up switching in
Okay,
seventh grade,
okay,
but
okay.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, so crazy. But my point in
Mhm.
that was just that sometimes we just have to do it scared,
Mhm.
And I love that your podcast is titled Show Me the Way. And you're creating content for people and having others share their life experiences to just help each other show the way because that's what we need. We need people to be encouraging one another. And for me, as a Christian, like I've mentioned, for me, a lot of times, show me the way is okay, asking God, like, what does my next step look like? What is my best yes? And it's not always black and white. And sometimes we just have to take that step and you don't see the fruit of your obedience until you're on the other side. And that's biblical. I mean, I could go on, we could do a whole. episode, Andrea, on like biblical examples of how that's the
We
case.
could, but that I'm glad you brought that up because that's why I call this the Show Me the Way podcast because I mentioned how faith has been such a big part of Kristen's life, and I've been inspired by her for a long time for that. Because as I've mentioned a few times, the reason I started this podcast was because my son Nathan, that we just spoke about, who's going to be a senior in high school, crazy, just like Kristen's daughter, he was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy when he was 5, and at that time I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. And I had some questions about faith at that time. And ever since then, I've been trying to build a better relationship with my faith and with God. And I would often pray that, show me the way. What am I supposed to be doing? But you make a good point, Kristen, that it's a starting point, but God wants us to figure things out too. We have to
Yeah.
play a part. So there is a path for all of us. I strongly believe He's got this all figured out for each one of us. But He's like, we're doing this together. Like, you have to come along with me. I've set this forward, but you also have to take the steps
Yeah. Yeah.
for
That's so
sure.
good. There's a phrase that's like, God will give you the wood, but he doesn't give you the table. You've got to build the
Yes.
table, you know?
Yes, yeah, and that it took a long time for me to say, "Okay, stop just asking him, like, figure some things out too. You have to work together." So, I appreciate
Yeah.
that, and yeah, Kristen also said it's a great title because we're all showing each other because we've been through a lot in our lives, and all of us have stories, and it's better to work together instead of saying, "You're doing this alone." It's, like, nice to
Yeah.
say, "I can relate to you," or, "I've been through something like that," or, "I'm making this big decision, and you've really helped me think about it differently." So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I started the podcast. I started it because I wanted to share Nathan's story and what it was like when we received that diagnosis, but then also people dealing with all kinds of change. Sometimes it's a
Mhm.
major challenge, adversity, it's a diagnosis for you or your child, but sometimes it's I decided to completely change gears, or Kristen had said 10, 15, 20 years ago, she might not have known that she would be going in this direction. So being open to it and then sharing what she learned and the perspective she gained from that. So that's the point behind the podcast. And I love hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
And Kristen was a little more organized than me. I always say there's no script, but she said, here's some thoughts. So she gave me that, which was very helpful. I probably should do that more often. But I do like people to just speak what's on their heart. And Kristen felt called to talk about this. So yeah, I'm going to turn the mic over to her and let her continue sharing her story.
Okay. Yeah. So January 1st, I was officially the owner of Thrive. But if I could have. I might have quit about the end of November and through the middle of December. And partly because I was afraid, partly because I felt like I was in over my head, and partly because I wondered if the amount of effort that it was taking to get from point A to point, we'll just call it D because Z is such a far ways away. I was wondering, is it worth it? Is it going to be worth it? And that's the truth. I thought about quitting and thought, what have I done? Where you question your life choices. And I work, an important part of the story I didn't tell yet is I went through Revelation Wellness instructor training to get certified myself in 2016. About 3 months after I graduated, they put out a job description for an opening they had working, I think it was like 5 or 10 hours a week as an event coordinator. And at the time, Andrea mentioned I did work for our church for 3 years. I had resigned from my position at our church and I just was in a season of in between. I really didn't know what my next steps were, but I was doing my best to listen to the Lord and to not rush because my personality is such to where I like to be busy. I like to do. I like to know I like to be thinking 5 steps ahead. So to be at this in between, oh my goodness, it was really difficult and really challenging, but I knew that I knew that I knew that the Lord was just like, "Okay, let's just be patient here for a second." So when this job opening came about, um, it paid very little. It may as well have been called a volunteer role, right? So I showed my husband and I'm like, "This is a really good use of my gifts. I think I would really enjoy this work." Because prior to me moving into full-time ministry, my background's in corporate America. And I just knew that I didn't want to go back to that field. To all of your listeners who are in that field, I applaud you. Well done. Um, but I knew that for me, I didn't want to go back in that field. So I applied and I did receive the position. 10 years later, I'm still on staff. I'm now full time and I serve as a director. I oversee all of our training and our events at Revelation Wellness. And that work really truly fills me. I love the people that I work with. A phrase I say at Rev often is that we have the blessing and the privilege of creating spaces and places for people to get to know the Lord and to get to know themselves. And I didn't want to give that up. And financially, I didn't know if we were in a position for our family if I could give that up just because I was going to purchase Thrive. So I was doing both. And I was burning the candle at both ends. And at the time, for anyone who's launched a business, you know how much work it is. And when you don't know what you're doing, that just adds layers to it. So I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit often. And I had this manila folder. So back in August, when the previous owner approached me about purchasing, I started to really just ask the Lord and seek his wisdom. And I was going through a Bible study at the time on Joshua, which oh, I started before the conversation even happened. And so beautiful because if you know the book of Joshua, it's about the Israelites going to cross the Jordan River. And in order for the Jordan River to dry up, some of the priests who went first had to put their toes in the river. And then the river dried up and they were able to cross over to get to the promised land. So it just was one God wink where I saw him working that I was going through that study at the time. So, anyways, I had this manila folder and I just was journaling through it. And it was like my why. This folder was my why I wanted to do this. And so I just kept writing and I just kept praying and just kept building up a case, if you will, in this folder to remind myself on these hard days of why I was doing this. And I would encourage any of your listeners, if you have a big decision to make, to do that, to write down your why, to remember all of the good or what the Lord is showing you. Because the days where it's hard, we forget real easily what the goodness looked like. It can be real easy to forget and real hard to remember. But if you have something to look back at, it can just be helpful. And I'm not suggesting that I was perfect at this and I looked at my little folder every single day. It was hard. That's certainly not the case, but it has carried me through. It has carried me through. So that is a big portion of what I thought I could share with your audience today of just like, I'm just an ordinary person who is trying to follow the Lord's leading and provide a space for people to move their bodies. I want it to be inclusive for everybody. Every person has a body. Everybody is made to move. And I want them to be able to just show up at my space and feel, and well, I say my space, but it's our space, and to just feel like it's their serenity. Because our bodies, it's this embodied faith where we have to train our bodies, we have to train our minds, and we have to train our spirits. I believe you can't train just one area of those. You really do have to train all of them, or you might feel like something's missing a little bit if you only train physically and you don't train your mental health. Well, you know, they, they go together. Does that make sense?
Yes, it really does. It really does. And I think sometimes we compartmentalize and put things in
Yeah.
different boxes. Actually, that was part of the message over the weekend at Northridge was there's a box that said sacred and a box that I forget what the other box said, but it was like ordinary things that we do every day. And instead of compartmentalizing, like it makes sense to try to blend the two and to understand that God is present all the time. So
Yeah.
if we separate that from our fitness, well, then maybe our heart, spirit, mind, maybe we're not all on the same page as our physical. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
appreciate
good.
that. Yeah, you said some things about Revelation Wellness, which I mentioned in my little intro that we have a friend in common, and that person she also went through certification. But for our listeners that don't really know much about that, can you tell us more?
Yeah. So, Revelation Wellness often is referred to as short around here as Rev. So, if you're in the community and you hear people saying a Rev instructor, that's what they're talking about. We do lots of different things, but we have two training tracks. One trains people to be fitness instructors, and that can look like a variety of things. As I mentioned, I started teaching boot camp in my backyard, or you could go apply to work at Lifetime Fitness if you wanted, or you could do one on one training if you felt like that's what the Lord was calling you to, anything fitness related. And then the other track, who our mutual friend went through, is our health coach training. And a health coach is exactly what it sounds like, somebody to just walk alongside you to help coach you and to teach you tools on how to better your health. Okay. And that's so broad, but it's so needed. So that could include talking about nutrition, but our health coaches, unless they receive their own nutrition certifications, they are equipped to talk about it, but they're not going to write a food plan for you. They might make a recommendation of a nutritionist wrote food plan, but they're not going to go outside of their scope of practice. And they might help you with some somatic practices. So if you get stressed, what are some coping mechanisms that you could do to help with your stress? So those are the two training tracks that Revelation Wellness does. Our website is revelationwellness.org. If anybody wants to check it out, there's a plethora of resources up there. One of them is our membership, where you can go through all sorts of different programs. But everything you find on the website, you're going to see this faith plus wellness infusion. And I'm going to use the word wellness as opposed to fitness, because it's not just about fitness, as I mentioned. It's about training the whole body.
Great. Thank you for sharing all of that. So, okay, now let's get back into your business. So, you had your doubts, you had your difficult moments, but you continued to remind yourself of your why. And I'm assuming you had family support and you were all on, you and your husband and your family were on the same page. So, you were able to keep moving forward. Now that you've got this business, tell us more about what Thrive is giving to others, and how you're bringing all this experience and your faith and everything to the business.
Yeah, great question. So, because we were already established, I'm not going to lie, like the first few months, it was let's just get off the ground, right? Previously, nothing was done online. There was no app, there was no online scheduling. It was done through a Google Sheet, and it worked well for 10 years. I think the previous owner had been in existence. For me, in order to stay working at Revelation Wellness and to do this, I was like, the first thing I've got to do is take everything online. So that was a big part of the lift. But I kind of share that to say, I haven't made a significant amount of changes at this point, because the goal was literally let's get off the round, and let's keep this studio afloat so that our 200 plus members still have a space to come move their bodies, train their minds, and be in community. Our studio is really special because we are small, and therefore everybody does kind of know each other. In fact, the classes that I teach, if we have a new person, I make everybody just quickly say like what their name is, so that everybody feels welcomed and seen. It's so important in our world today that I believe that people feel seen, because it's a noisy world out there, and that's my goal, is to create a safe place for them to move. And we have a mentality of, you only look to the left or to the right to encourage one another, no comparison. And again, that's what I meant earlier when I was saying a little bit off the script of how the world often does things. I really want people to feel empowered, like push yourself for sure. Your instructor is going to push you if you want it. You may just want to show up and not do what the instructor's saying, and that's okay too. Like maybe you just want to lie in child's pose for an extra couple moments, like that's fine, right? But to not have this comparison game, and to not have like a striving mentality, but instead just a positive environment. In fact, it's funny, there is a student at the studio who once said that I'm too nice, and I'm like, you know what, I'll own that. I'll take it. I can be stern if I need to be, but if that's how I'm perceived, I'm okay with that.
For sure. And especially Pilates or yoga or anything like that, it is easy to compare because some people are more flexible than others and
Yeah,
some
right?
some people have been doing it for years. They studied with Joseph,
Totally.
like, and you're like, wow,
Totally.
they know everything. And then sometimes there's people that just want to start stretching and moving their bodies and they don't want to feel judged. So it's great to
That's right.
create a safe place.
Yeah.
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 So I like that you've talked a lot about community. Something I just reminded myself I've kind of stepped away from. For we are on season 2. I've been doing the podcast for 2 seasons. I've dropped a new episode every week, which I've been very happy about. But for season 2, I was trying to remember to always bring up the importance of community and
Mhm.
of those that have been around us and have supported us. And I know, and it sounds like that's been a big thing for you. So talk a little bit about the importance of having support and community.
Yeah, man, that is so good. And I love that you're just trying to have that be one of the threads that weaves through all of your podcasts because it's the truth. As I mentioned earlier, it's a noisy world out there, and social media can be like great on so many places. Hey, that's how we got connected for this podcast today. You put
Mhm.
out a question, somebody recommended. I do think that there's a lot of great things that can come from it. But it can also be this comparison trap that we've discussed, or it can be you see a highlight reel and you only see the good that's happening in somebody's life and you have no idea what was behind the scenes or maybe the adversity that they experienced to get there. So community in general is necessary. I don't know why this thought just popped in my head, but I guess I'll share it. We used to live about 2 miles, let's see, it would be east of here, in a very small neighborhood. I think there were about like 50 homes. And my husband so much as even went to be on the board for the neighborhood to try to like create activities because we wanted to raise our kids in a community that people knew each other, or if you literally needed an egg, you could go grab one next door. And we did what we could and we loved the house. We loved the space that we had there. But it just everybody stayed to themselves. I think a lot of people too worked really long hours all around us, and there weren't a ton of kids. And if you do live in our area where Andrea and I live, there's an ice cream place right next to the neighborhood that I live in now. And we used to go get ice cream at Cold Stone. And then we would drive through the neighborhood that it's at. And like the neighbors were waving to us and stuff. We're like, do they think we live here? It just was like that was the dynamic of this neighborhood. And Phil and I used to say, oh, wonder what that's like to live in a neighborhood where like people wave at you when you're out on a walk. And I wonder what that's like to see people out and about all the time. Cause I'm not even exaggerating. Our previous neighborhood, like you hardly ever saw anybody out and about. So ultimately, we decided to move. And it was around that time where I mentioned earlier where I felt like I was to step out of corporate America. So we did give up some of the space that we had both in our house and our yard. And it's funny because we used to say we could never live in that neighborhood. The houses are so close together. But turns out that was actually intentional by the original builder is they purposely built the homes close together and made them bright colors. Um, at least this is what I'm told. I've never actually looked into this, but
No,
the
you're
bright
right.
color. Yeah, okay, you know this story.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, the bright colors are supposed to like just help like ease anxiety or just lift spirits and lift moods. And when they built the houses so close together, it was supposed to, I'm going to put in air quotes, force community. But turns out it works. So we moved in this neighborhood in 2016 and it was one of the best choices we've ever made. We've been able to um, let our kids, go ride bikes and go to friends and have friends over. In fact, I remember the first time Nathan ever came over to our
Came to your
house.
house, yes.
Yes. And, I know this, I wasn't even going to talk about this, but again, I'm just organically seeing where our
Yes.
conversation goes. So, how our yard works is there's trees, like guarding, I guess you could say, kind of blocking to get to the backyard. But there's brick pavers on our back patio. And so Nathan was in his wheelchair, and I don't even know what the kids were all hanging out for, but they had been out just walking around, and they were deciding they were going to come to our house and do a little fire, and make s'mores and stuff. And I can remember looking out and seeing all these kids determined to figure out how to get his wheelchair to the back porch, and they figured it out. And I just thought, how cool. And I remember talking to Kaylee about it afterwards. And you know what was beautiful, Andrea, that I saw is like they obviously knew he had physical limitations because of his wheelchair, but they didn't see him like that. Like they saw him as their friend and their buddy. And like they just wanted to go make s'mores and let's figure this out. And I thought, man, can we all learn from that? Right? Like as adults, can we all learn from these kids who just saw him as their friend? And like, I wish I could articulate better what that did for my mama hurt that day to just be like, it's a tough world, right? There's a lot of noise out there. And to just be a kid again and to just go like roast some marshmallows in the
Mm-hmm.
backyard. And it was everything kind of coming into fruition of like, this is what we wanted. We wanted our kids to have a space to where um, they can all meet up in a neighborhood and go have a place to hang out. So wow, this was a rabbit trail around community, but
No,
it all
I
kind of
love it. Love it. And I'm very glad you shared that story. Keep going.
yeah, but community is important because it's a hard enough life out there. And, some adversity is bigger than others. You could have a tough day because of a series of small things that might irritate you. Some of the challenges I faced when I was opening Thrive were not really that big of a deal in and of themselves. Like if you separated them all, but when you accumulated them, and let's say there were 6 or 7 things that happen in one day, and then you've got my day job, if I had a couple maybe personnel issues there or problems we were trying to solve, and then you've got a parenting issue, like when you put it all together, sometimes these smaller adversities can add up and it just can make life hard. And that's when community can come into play, where you need your positive people around you. You need um, your church family. I do believe as believers, like we do need our church family because to have that um, like mindedness and to have people pointing you back to show you the way, right? I think that's super important. And then I'll just tie in again, like to have a space to where you can go move your body in a positive community is just so important.
S I love all of that. It's all very related and it all makes so much sense. It goes along with starting a new business. It goes along with having, 2 different positions and trying to make them both work. It goes along with where you wanted to live and how you wanted to raise your kids, but it also goes along with every single episode I have, every single person I talk to. It's like I think back to COVID when we just spent so much time just with our families. A lot of people said, "Oh, that was so great. We had that dedicated time with just our families." But I need people, and I just believe we
Hmm.
all need one another, and community is so important. So, keeping us away from one another, having a pandemic that kept us away from one another was really tough because I think people need people. So, I'm glad
Yeah.
you shared all of that for sure. So, tell us more about the Thrive community. You said there were a ton of people before you took over ownership and you wanted to maintain that community and build upon it.
Yeah. So, Thrive, I would say, is maybe unique, at least to the different Pilates studios and fitness studios that I've visited, in the sense of we have a very diverse and wide range of clients. Okay. So my daughter is 17, and some of her friends, her and some of her friends train there. I would say they're probably the youngest. And then we have clients up into almost 90 years old. So it's so beautiful though, because we can learn from each other, right? And you can inspire one another. Like a 17-year-old can inspire a 50-year-old, and a 87-year-old who's lifting weights can inspire a 17-year-old to go, man, keep training your body your whole life. It's so good for you. So we have a very diverse population, and it- you know, people come from all walks of life. And again, it's there are some studios that are trendy right now. Like, listen, I'm in the fitness world. I'm not naive to know that some fitness studios are very much into like, you must wear your matching sets if you show up. And like, there's this really high energy. And by the way, I think that's cool. Sometimes I want to go to a studio like that, but that's not the vibe that we're going for. We're just trying to be like your neighborhood studio where if you want a basic class, a foundational class, you will find it. If you want a hard class, you will find it. I personally take one of our advanced classes. My friend Sarah is the instructor, and she will kick your butt. She will make you sweat and shake. We have some professional athletes that train there, the Olympian ice dancers train at Thrive. Like it's so diverse. That is the best adjective that I could tell you. And I think that's one thing that makes our community special is because there's something for everyone. There's something from everyone. And you know what? Some of our seniors, they work hard. They may only use 3-pound weights in some of my strength classes, but I will put them up against anybody, anytime, and say they will outwork you. I put my money on it.
That's awesome. So, if somebody wanted to learn more about it, I mean, I'll share all of the information in the show notes, but obviously they can sign up for things online because you incorporated that portion, right? So, you have a website
Yes.
that they could go to.
Yes, it's Thrive Pilates and Fitness.org. So we have 7 reformers. A reformer is a Pilates machine. And if you've never been on the Pilates reformer machine before, you might be super intimidated if you look at it at first. But I've truthfully never really met anyone that tried it and was like, I really hated that. Like most people end up loving it, but it is intimidating at first. So we require a new student to do like a one-on-one or a small group introductory first so that we can teach them how to safely use the machine and we can teach them the key fundamental moves that they'll use or build off of in most classes. So we require, if you've never been on a reformer before, that you do that intro first, and then you're free to book in any of our classes. And then we also have the fitness classroom or the that side of the studio where anybody can come anytime. You don't have to have a demo. Where we offer strength classes, cardio drumming, mat Pilates, yoga, bar. Let's see. We have a melt class, which is like a patent foam roller. It's really cool, especially if people have chronic pain or injuries. Melt really helped me transform after a car accident. Um, but yeah, that's what we've got. We offer 50 classes a week, so lots of options to choose from.
Wow, that's amazing. I love Pilates, but I will admit I only do home Peloton virtual courses. So I should probably step out of my comfort zone and see what it would be like to I've never used a reformer and to see what it's like to be in person in class with others. But yeah, I really love Pilates, so I might have to add that to my list here, something to try. It's very close to me. I have no excuse.
There you go. Well, and it's good for you for getting it in on your own, because a lot of people need the accountability. Speaking
Right.
of community, right? Like they need that accountability. And by the way, me too. I like to be a student. I pay for a membership actually at another gym too, where I can just show up and somebody tell me what to do.
Yeah,
And
that's
there are
nice.
times there are times where I don't want to go, but if you registered for a class, it's a lot
Mhm.
harder to skip out on than just pressing play. So I applaud you
Yep.
if you're getting it in at home.
Well, thank you. I want to go back quickly to, I guess it doesn't have to be quickly, but I want to go back to the faith behind all of this and how you relied so much on your very strong faith and praying. And you even mentioned fasting and really focusing on making this decision and then how that looks now. I mean, you're continuing with the business, you have kept the doors open and I'm sure you have goals for the future. Right now, you said, let's get off the floor, but
Mhm.
businesses usually take, I don't, like 5 years before you can feel really comfortable. So, how has this faith journey and the steps really helped you along this way?
Yeah. Man, Andrea, I'm like, oh, such a loaded question. My faith to me is everything. That's like the short answer. And I think for me, I didn't grow up in a home where like I was taught to do the practices that I do today. I grew up in a home where my parents um were Christian, but like we didn't go to church. I can remember having like a Precious Moments Bible. Do you remember those?
Yes, I think my
I
sister
had
had one of those.
yes. I had one, but I didn't know how to use it. So everything that I practice now today, I will tell you is just compounded interest. Like I've learned and built on it over the years for a few things. One, the Lord came after me, right? Like he came after my heart and I knew I needed it. And I've really seen him work in some incredible ways. And sometimes it's really small ways where, like I mentioned earlier, I was talking about how I was studying Joshua and I mentioned that was a God wink. I would consider that maybe something small, but I've got some really cool, big stories too where I've seen the Lord move. And so some of it small, some of it big, but it's compounded interest over the years. And for me, if something is working in my life, I generally am like, I'm going to keep doing that. But that doesn't mean that my faith hasn't been tested. I've had some really big trials. One of the hardest times my faith was personally tested was dealing with infertility. And man, that was tough. I can remember just being angry with the Lord, but never questioning his authority and never questioning his timing. And then when my son Cole was finally born, that's one of those times where I can look back, right? Hindsight's 2020 and go, man, I wanted things to be this way, but now I can see how God's hand was on it and his way was so much better, so much better. So like I mentioned this earlier, how journaling for me has been important because I don't know about you, but like I'd be forgetful and I can forget real easily. So I do make it a habit to try to journal like the big things and the small things or what I'm learning. If I listen to a podcast, I love listening to podcasts and something speaks to me, I write it down and I'll flip back through to remind myself. Or when I wanted to quit the pathway of opening Thrive, I'll go back through that manila folder of just like, what was I learning? What was I seeing? Where was I seeing his hand? Because for me, that's what keeps me going. I can only speak to what works for me, right? I will say that for me, most mornings, I try to have my day start with the Lord first. It's really truly my non-negotiable. Now, there are some mornings where maybe I'm out of my normal routine and I can't, and I'm not going to beat myself up over it or whatever. But the days where I can start with my normal routine of being with the Lord, just have significantly shown the trajectory for the day to just be set up so much better. And what does that look like? It can look so different every single day. For example, on Tuesdays, I start teaching strength classes at 6 a.m. I'm a little sleepy when I'm like reading something at 5:30, but I do promise you, I am in the word before I go teach, even if it's 2 minutes. Because for me, I know that that's what sustains me and it's give me this day, your daily bread. Another thing for me that has worked is trying to, I'm not always great about this because sometimes I'm tired or I forget or whatever, but I try to end my day asking myself, where did I see the Lord today? And maybe it's laying in bed. There's an app that I like that's called Lectio 360, and you can just press play. And there's an AM version and an evening version. And a lot of times, like I'll fall asleep listening to that. It might be 10 minutes or less, but they often have you just reflecting on like, where did you see the Lord today? I like to be in nature. I love Michigan summers. I love going out and just walking. And sometimes it's with no music and just listening to the birds and feeling the sun and just having like a heart of gratitude. Sometimes it's listening to worship music. Sometimes it's listening to your podcast, True Story, or other podcasts that I love. But getting outside in nature and just really trying to saturate myself. I think that's the word that comes to mind right now is saturation is important to me, and it's also how I'm trying to raise my kids too, is to what does it look like for you to be saturated. And this is like, this keeps tying back to what we already talked about, is the world is noisy. There can be a lot of pressure. There can be a lot of like things that set you off in your day. There can be things that are stressful, or every adversity is unavoidable. That's going to happen. There are going to be things that disappoint us. There are going to be things that don't go our way, some big, some small. So, what can you do to stay saturated and to get your nervous system reset so that we can keep going with our next best yes, if you will? Does that answer the question?
It does. I love that so much. And yeah, it just I always say this during my podcast that I have crazy notes. They're all over the place. So I'm appreciating so much of what you're saying. You also said the word God wink early on, and it was such a God wink that you are sharing your story and all of this today because I just think spot on. God's timing is the ultimate. And whenever I think I'm in control, whenever I think my timing is what's going on, I'm quickly reminded you're not in control. Things are not going to work out the way you want them to work out. As I've mentioned a couple times in the podcast, I'm a realtor. And let me tell you, every single real estate deal is different. Every single one has its challenges.
I
And
bet.
early this week, I had a couple of different things going on and I moved a little too quickly and I went forward in my own direction. And I quickly found out, slow down. That's not how you were supposed to approach that. You are not in control. I'm reminded of that. Anytime I go off on my own little tangent, God has to, bring me back in. And that happened a couple of times this week. So you're reminding me of that again. And I love the saturate yourself too. I think that's wonderful. And like I said, you're an inspiration. I'm glad that you're
Mm,
teaching your children to be like that and that you're bringing so much of your faith into your business, into your everyday life. It's one. You don't have them
yeah,
compartmentalized like we said. So
yeah. Trying,
yeah,
trying.
yeah, well, it's very clear from my perspective. But yeah, you never know where these podcasts are going to go, but I do strongly believe that everybody has where these episodes are going to go. But I strongly believe everybody has a story to share. I'm certain that I could interview you another day and we could talk about something completely different. We could talk about
Totally.
parenting. We could talk about what you did back in your corporate life. Same with me. But today supposed to be the message that you shared to talk to us about, you know, taking this decision, praying, having faith, recognizing your community and taking this leap, knowing that this is the path that you're supposed to be on. And look at all these lives you're impacting. And
Mm,
I also love that you're bringing everything from Revelation Wellness to it as well. The two go so
yeah.
very nicely together. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you
yeah.
for having me. I think the like closing message I would have for everyone is just physical training has so much to teach us, whether it's Pilates or it's fitness, or maybe you like boxing or you're a bike rider or whatever, because we don't just build strength by avoiding resistance, right? In order to build strength, you actually have to put your body under stress and to go through resistance. But isn't that life, right?
Mhm.
And so physical training can help us learn how to regulate our breath and to just do one rep, one set at a time, one breath at a time. And that translates to life. Man, last week I had to go through something really hard with my father who is unwell. And I literally was telling myself in my head, because I was trying to keep it together for my son who was with me, this is why we train. This is why we train. I can do hard things. I can do hard things because there's just so many parallels.
Definitely. What great little nuggets. I often say leave a little nugget at the end and I was going to ask that next and
Oh,
you went ahead and gave us one. Yeah, I had a guest on season 1. She said my father always taught me to leave nuggets everywhere you go. So
mm,
that is a great one. Very true. I need to remember that too. I I try to remind myself to be calm in so many situations, and I'm not really good at doing that. So, yeah,
that's hard.
I love the one step at a time. And yeah, you're right. When we are even Pilates is a great example when you're this is when you breathe in, this is when you breathe out. Like
Hmm.
breathing's a big part of it. So, remembering that in everyday life, it is hard, but that's a good little tidbit as well. So, yeah, I appreciate Kristen so much for being on here. I knew she was going to show us the way or many different ways. But yeah, I wanted to hear about this business and this leap of faith, and I'm certain that many of our listeners, even if you aren't facing a major decision like that or a life change, many of the things Kristen reminded us will be useful and helpful as you get through your day. And one day at a time, that's very important. And I do like starting and ending the day in the way that Kristen spoke about. I also like to remind myself what I'm grateful for and to
Yeah.
thank God for all of the blessings. I try to do that, but she's reminding me to do that more often, and definitely going to go check out that app too. That will be great. But yeah, I'm so proud of you. I am going to come see your studio sooner than later, and I just hope all the best for you and those connected to that community, and prayers also for your father. But yeah, I appreciate you giving us some time today, and here's to an awesome continued success with Thrive. And I just know that you're going to keep doing great things. And I appreciate you taking time out today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Andrea. You're doing really good work here with your
Oh, thank you.
podcast.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me for the Show Me the Way podcast. I truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. I hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If this episode touched your heart, don't forget to leave a quick review as it will help us reach and motivate more people. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.